Hello! Group B, the banter group, with England, Iran, USA, and a Euro playoff winner. It will be between Ukraine, Scotland, or Wales. Whoever comes across victorious in that playoff path, those matches will be happening in June. Unfortunately, we gotta wait all the way till then, but still, what an exciting group nevertheless. Many people are obviously leaning towards England being the favorites in this group. I mean, look at their squad, look at the morale on the team, look at what Southgate has done in previous tournaments recently. You gotta give credit to the side. I don't blame anyone for thinking they'll get first place. It would be a bit embarrassing if they don't end up clinching it. The depth in the squad is so crazy that even Southgate gets a headache trying to pick it. I mean, he often leaves out so much amazing talent. You've got the likes of Tomori, who's phenomenal in the Serie A right now, still often missing the England call-up, and still selecting Harry Maguire. You know what? I can't question Southgate too much. He has had phenomenal runs recently. Euro final, World Cup semi-finals. But with that being said, you shouldn't rule out the other teams in this group. Iran, in my opinion, one of the most impressive teams in Asia in recent times. They looked amazing in the World Cup qualifiers, and the attack they have is absolutely dangerous. The partnership between Taremi and Azmoun could very much be electric at this World Cup. Plus, Dragan Skocic is doing a fantastic job with the national team. I am hearing some things now that people want him gone, but why? Look at what he's done with the side so far. You got to give him a chance at the World Cup. I understand why fans miss Carlos Queiroz, but still, I think the Iranian team will be fired up in this tournament. As last time, they did get knocked out in the group stage, but keep in mind, they were in a group with Spain and Portugal, and they actually nearly did it. They're only 1 point behind Portugal at the end. Even Morocco put off fantastic fights. It just shows you can't rule out any team in this World Cup, but at the same time, Iran could definitely be determined to do bits, get redemption against any team they face after their hopeful but disappointing 2018 results. And you've also got Jahan Bakhsh. Sorry if I'm butchering that name, but as dangerous as Iran's attack look right now, he still might be one of their most important players. The goalkeepers also always pull off a show. We've seen it in the past. They got new options to work with this time compared to 2018. Not for those UEFA teams, Ukraine, Scotland, or Wales. Depending on who it is, I think they can very much influence the group in different ways. Ukraine, we've obviously seen this side crash to England in the Euros 4-0 in the quarterfinals. Despite that disappointing result, though, let's not forget that Ukraine made it all the way to the quarterfinals in Euro 2020. With the likes of Scotland, we already seen them draw to England in the Euros. And then Wales, I believe they topped England in the group stage in Euro 2016. Gonna be a big battle regardless. England has some sort of connecting history with all these teams, whether it's football related or not. And that's why I love this group. It's gonna be absolute banter, and England will be very devastated if they can't grab 3 wins in this. Maybe they'll take a draw, but if any of these teams manage to beat them, it would be a massive 3 points for them, and it could very much influence the group. England played the USA on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. Imagine if the USA pull a shocker against England. Now, I'm going into the USA last because I actually brought on a special guest for this video. He's been on here before, Tactical Manager TV. He's an expert on the US national team, so make sure you go check him out. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description below. But yeah, I had a chat with him to see what his thoughts were about this group and how hopeful he is for the US national team this year. Filippo, thanks for coming on yet again on the channel. I know you're a little bit more optimistic than I am about the US national team, especially going into this World Cup. But let me know what your thoughts are initially, your early thoughts on this group coming up.
Obviously, there's reasons to be pessimistic, which I believe we're going to get into it later on. But my first thoughts on this group when I saw it right away is I think there's no excuses for England, right? They need to get through this group. They should be able to top this group. There's a lot of competent teams like the US, Iran, and maybe it'll be Wales, but it could be Ukraine or Scotland as well. So anything can happen in the group, but nonetheless to say, I fully expect England to go through. And then when it comes to the second team, it's really going to depend on first how they do against England. Whoever can scrape out a point against England or maybe a win, even though that's not probable. And we'll see who the other opponent is. I personally think if Wales goes through, that is the toughest team of the 3. Ukraine has a lot to deal with right now, obviously, so they have their own problems outside of soccer. And then you got Scotland, which in my opinion is the weaker of those 3 teams.
Okay, yeah, I was about to ask you which of those teams you thought was the strongest one from UEFA, but I gotta agree with you. I think Wales might be the toughest one if you guys got to come up against them. Obviously, some individual players to talk about, but many people neglect the rest. There's a lot of talent still in the squad, and they come together collectively. And I think that's what the US might be lacking. It might be the opposite from that. I think there's a lot of star players to talk about, but then when they come collectively with the manager, Greg Berhalter, what are your thoughts on him necessarily going into the World Cup?
I don't know where your viewers are from, right? Most of them, maybe the United States, Europe, whatever. But I think a good way to put it is he would be the American Southgate. right? We're looking into Southgate. He's got a great generation in his hands and lots of talent, some young players. So sure, there could be some inconsistencies. But it seems like the U.S., a lot of the times, we're a great bunch of individuals and we never look like a team. And then CONCACAF is a very weak confederation. So because of that, the games at home, the United States has been able to out-talent the opponents and win and go through. Away, we have been horrendous. And a lot of the times when Greg does his rotations and all that, it didn't go well, right? It didn't go well. And we barely qualified in CONCACAF, right? We qualified in away goal differential, which is very worrisome considering the confederation we play for. But with that said, when you look into the way we played and how we went throughout World Cup qualifying, one of the reasons to be optimistic is the way we played. I can't see us playing worse than that. That's the low. I can't see this generation playing worse than that. So we're either going to be just like we were in qualifier, which if we are just like we were in qualifier, we probably won't make it out of the group. But I think we'll improve by then. The team is young, and every month you can see the players getting better. So Greg doesn't really have tactical flexibility. We play a very weird 4-3-3 formation where our fullbacks jump high up the field and our eights drop as fullbacks. It's horrible because you don't have a midfield, so we don't create through the middle. We only create through the flanks. And we don't really have a center forward. That is one of the main issues with this team. Yeah. There's no center forward. So this whole tactical approach doesn't go well with this team, but it seems like Greg is reluctant to change that. So we're probably going to see that. But I'll give you one thing. The United States in CONCACAF is forced to play on the ball, control the game, impose themselves. It's not going to be the case a lot of the times in World Cup, especially against England. And I've noticed, and many have said this too, the United States is a transition team. We're much better when we have to defend and attack in transition. Our players are better in that way too. Many of them, Tim Weah, Pulisic, Brendan Aronson, Weston, Yunus Musa. These guys are very dangerous in transition. So in the World Cup, that some opponents will just impose themselves over us, it might actually work in our favor, right? Different from CONCACAF. But again, we haven't seen that, so that's me speculating.
I was going to say, it'll still be a big test regardless because I know we talked about in the past, how would the U.S. rank against UEFA teams? Well, now they're coming up against one of the best ones, and then maybe one lesser on paper, but still, I think it's definitely something the U.S. can take advantage of based on the ability they have and show their worth. I know the U.S. is ranked pretty highly on the FIFA rankings as well.
Way too high.
It's hard to judge those FIFA rankings, honestly, based on where Belgium had been at for so long as well, first place.
Yeah, they're high enough that they're pot 2, and that's the same pot as Germany, for example. And when you look at some other teams, we even talked about this on the stream we had for the World Cup, and Mexico and the United States were the 2 weakest teams in pot 2.
But we dove in a lot to Europe, but what are your thoughts necessarily coming up against a side like Iran? Yeah,
I've done some research in Iran, and I've talked to some Iran fans and even analysts, and it's an interesting team, right? Taremi up top, the center forward from FC Porto. The guy's been getting double-digit goals and assists every season in Liga NOS since he arrived. So they don't have a problem there. But their midfield apparently, and I haven't watched them since 2018, but from what they've told me, their midfield is very unathletic, slow, low stamina. And in terms of United States, that is something very good for us because when you look at our midfield is electrifying. There are players that can press, that are fast and physical. Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, Yunus Musa. So that can work to our advantage winning the midfield battle. The question is, how will defenders like Walker, Zimmerman, and Miles Robinson, which are Greg's favorites to play at the center back, deal with Taremi and other players they have up top? Iran can definitely score. Azmoun as well, that plays for Leverkusen and played for Zenit. How are they going to deal with that? On the other hand, we probably will win that midfield battle. And my main concern with that game with Iran is it's the last game of this group. It's USA and Iran, and England will face the other European side. If Iran comes into this game needing a draw, they're going to probably play more defensive. And the United States always struggles when they play against low blocks and they have to create, and that's when the United States is poor. So we could get into a situation in the last game where the United States is not put in a position to succeed because we don't succeed in that position of playing against a low block team. Yeah. So we'll have to wait and see. In terms of talent, the United States does seem to have more talent than Iran and more depth, but I don't discount Iran. It can go either way.
They've been such a unit lately, and I got to say, I think their manager, Dragan Skocic, is doing a fantastic job.
The Iran fans I talked to, they're not happy with him. They want Carlos Queiroz back from 2018.
That's what I heard too, yeah.
Yeah, but in the other hand, there's many questions in regards to Iran. I told them this because their qualifier overall is fairly easy, kind of like CONCACAF. And when you look into Iran's qualifiers, you got to bring up one thing. The toughest team they faced in their group was South Korea, and they tied and they lost, and then they beat everyone else. So you do have to raise that question. How good is this Iran side? And I know against South Korea, one of the games, they were missing 4 to 5 starters. So that definitely affects the team. But I think Iran and the United States are two enigma teams in this group. We don't know what to expect. And it's going to depend a lot on how they arrive in the last game. I think if the United States arrive in the last game needing a draw and playing in transition, I think we're going to go through. Iran will struggle with that. Especially because if we go a little bit of a medium to low block, Walker Zimmerman and Miles Robinson, they're not really ball-playing defenders for the U.S., but if you play a lower block or more defensive, they're pretty good at that. And I've been very critical of them. So it's going to come down to if any of them can scrape out points against England and that other European side who we're going to face, because Gareth Bale becomes this old Gareth Bale that we remember of Real Madrid days against. When he's playing for Wales, he's a different player.
Yeah, we've already seen it against Austria. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely do you think it is that the U.S. will get out of the group?
We're 7 months away, right? So we still have to see the roster and everything. But I'll say a 7.
7?
Yeah, and again, it's not based off any analysis of what's going on now because so much can change. We've seen the United States do more with less. That's my whole point. And there is talent in his team, and if Greg figures out a little bit by the time we reach Qatar, we should be able to pull through. I'll give it a 7. Because I'm optimistic towards improving. But if we are the same exact team we saw in World Cup qualifying in terms of playing, I reduce it to maybe a 4 or a 3. The odds are not in our favor. So it depends a lot on us seeing improvement in these next 7 months.
It's still too early to tell anything, but even with that, this also might be a bit of an early question to ask, but which players from each of the teams in this group are you keeping your eye on the most?
So England right away, 2 players that catch my attention. There's this... English fans hate to hear this. They hate to hear this. And England doesn't have creativity through the midfield. Okay? They don't have it. That's one of the main reasons why Harry Kane dropped so deep, and he's their best playmaker. Right? There's a reason to that. And Italy was able to take him out of the game in the Euro final. And
when you say they lack creativity, are you also talking about the likes of Phil Foden, Mason Mount?
I'm going to get there. He plays them wide through the middle, like the United States. They don't have creativity through the middle, mostly because of Southgate. Now, Phil Foden is the other player I was going to mention, and you mentioned it ahead of time. He's a player that can pick a lock. He's a player that can, off the dribble, break a defense and find someone, score, create an opportunity. It's going to depend a lot on that because the teams that face England will play very defensive. It's all going to come down to how is Harry Kane going to do? And if these players that can off a dribble pick a lock, that can just pull some magic, and I think Phil Foden, in my opinion, is the best one to do that. How are they going to perform? So those would be the 2 players, because the rest of England, when you look at Calvin Phillips possibly starting there with Declan Rice like the Euros, they're going to provide a lot of solidity in the back. They're going to protect that back line very well and help England not get exposed with like Harry Maguire, because they like to say how he performs for England and doesn't for Manchester United. Well, guess what? The way England plays doesn't expose Harry Maguire. Usually they go with the back 3, if I'm not mistaken. Plus, they usually have 2 center mids there that can protect the back line very well, and Declan Rice is a fantastic player. The United States, I think it comes down to 2 guys, right? And I could go and mention some major prospects like Giovanni Reina, maybe Pepe come through in the center forward position, but I think it comes down to this: Weston McKennie and Christian Pulisic. Pulisic has to be in his A game. We need to have him in his A game. If he's struggling every game, it's going to be a problem for us. And Weston McKennie was probably our best player throughout World Cup qualifying. He covers a lot of ground, dynamic, and probably in this group, people like to hear this or not, he might be the biggest goal-scoring threat in set pieces. This guy is scoring set pieces in Juventus, CONCACAF, which the players are big and physical. So Weston and Pulisic would be the 2 Americans. Now, Iran, we mentioned the 2 players, Taremi, and what's the name of the other one? Because I can't pronounce it correctly.
Azmoun
Yeah. From Leverkusen. Even though he's been struggling at Leverkusen, he was pretty good at Zenit, and we know he can score. And Taremi, for sure. Those are the 2 players you got to watch out for in Iran. And now going to the European sides, Wales, I said, it's all about Gareth Bale. It's about they have players that are very good too, and that can be effective. But it comes down to Gareth Bale at the end of the day.
He's the standout player. I mean, it's make or break whether he performs or not.
Scotland, I've mentioned they're the weaker side, but is there anyone that would be considered a high-level player in the Scottish side besides like the medium level, besides Andy Robertson?
I was going to say Robertson, yeah. You also got Tierney from Arsenal, John McGinn from Aston Villa.
Man, this could age very poorly. I don't see Scotland making it.
I mean, we still have a while to go, and we haven't seen them play. I mean, we've seen the friendlies recently, but, you know, they haven't even gone through their first round against Ukraine. We've seen what this side's capable of. They're able to beat the likes of Serbia and Euro qualifiers, and Serbia is looking super strong now. So anything's possible.
But in terms of Ukraine, haven't done much research on them or watched them enough to talk about it. So I'll let you take it from here, from Ukraine.
Fair enough. I'd say for Ukraine, it's Yarmolenko, I think, is their key player that I wouldn't say he's necessarily by far their best player on paper, but what you look at what he's done for the Ukraine team, he makes a difference many times. But if you're going to go off the most skilled player and probably the best right now, I'd probably say Malinovsky. So one of those two, I think, are the two standout players. Ukraine's defense might be a bit questionable. Obviously, you got the likes of Zinchenko as well for Manchester City, but he plays in the midfield for his international team. What are your final predictions? Or not final, your early predictions on this group?
It's just such a nasty question, right? Because
we don't have early.
We don't even have all the teams.
Yeah, I know. We don't know the rosters. We don't know who's going to be injured. There's a lot to factor. We could even see some new players pop off in these next 7 months.
So for me to do this prediction, do we just assume one of the three nations make it as the fourth? We assume one of them?
Yeah. Give me. So you're going with Wales right now, right?
I'll assume Wales.
Okay. Yeah, go for that.
So I still have England topping the group, and we know anything can happen in the World Cup, and even the United States topped the group in 2010 with England, right? And that was unexpected. But it happens. But I'm going to go safe here and say for now England going first. I'm going to go with the United States going second. One, because I think it's straight up open, the second spot. Any of these teams can get it. So sure, why would I not pick my team, right? And then if Wales goes through, I have Wales finishing third ahead of Iran. I would have Iran in fourth place. No disrespect to Iran, but I think Wales will know how to defend. They're going to defend very well in this group. It's going to be tough to score on them. And Gareth Bale can pull off some magic here and there. He's a different level for this team. So I'll have England, United States, Wales, and Iran. But again, those three nations right there, besides England, anything can happen. England, if they don't make it, it's an embarrassment. That's the way I'll put it.
For sure. They know it as well. They don't want to lose to the U.S. Yeah, I'd say them first easily. I'd be very surprised if we're wrong on that. And then the rest of the three, it's really unpredictable. I'm also going to say Wales are the most probable team to make it, but obviously we could be wrong on that. But with that being said, I could see Iran being the team to come second. I don't mean to do the U.S. dirty. Obviously, like I said, fantastic players on the team. But collectively, Iran have just been really impressing me. And this could very much change. As we've seen right now, the morale might not be there. As a lot of fans are talking about, they don't even want Dragan Skocic there, and now they're trying to replace him with Carlos Queiroz. Very much could change very early on, but I'm going to say Iran makes second. They just were so impressive in 2018. We saw them nearly get out of a group with Spain and Portugal, so we got to remember that as well. But so that's why I see them putting off really.
Hey, the U.S. was undefeated in 2018. Okay, so
true.
No, but yeah, as I said, anyone that says Wales, the only, like, let's say Wales or says United States or Iran second, I don't have much to argue against that. I think these teams are about the same level in terms of being a team, right? One of them are more of they have more cohesion and more of a team. The other one has maybe more talents, but overall they're about the same level. It's going to be down to details, and maybe whoever can maybe scrape out a draw with England, right? That would be a massive point if any of them can do it. That can be maybe the decisive point even to qualify. So we'll see. It's very hard to predict it right now. Obviously, since I'm saying they're so balanced, I have to go with my team.
Right now, I'm going to say Iran. That could change. I want to see how the U.S. does in the Nations League as well. I think we'll know a lot more by then as well, how much they'll improve. But for now, at April 2022, we still got so much time. Iran second. U.S. third, Wales fourth for me. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised also if Wales prove me wrong, as this is Gareth Bale's first and last World Cup. He's going to want to go out with a bang as well. So I won't be surprised if any of these teams finish fourth. It's really going to be neck and neck. And I could see that second place spot being determined off of goal differentials. So yeah, sorry U.S. national team fans, at the moment I've got Iran going through. Could change, like I said in my discussion with Filippo. The morale could very much change. We're already seeing it happen, so that very much could question my pick in the future. Every country in this group has every reason to believe in themselves, even those UEFA teams that haven't qualified yet. And I think no matter what happens, it's going to be a great battle between all these teams. This group's going to go down to the wire. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But yeah, that's the end of this video, guys. Again, shout out to Filippo for representing the US national team. I don't do a good enough job of it sometimes, I know, but he's the expert. It was great to have him on. Make sure you go check out his channel. Like I said, I'm leaving a link in the description below. Thank you all for making it to the end. Hit that like button if you haven't already. Subscribe if you're new. I'll see you all very, very soon. Take care. La con noche.